Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Resurrection of Tex Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Can't really describe to you how good it feels to be back here, standing in front of this green screen behind this podium here, or as we like to call it, the pedestal. Actually, the most preferred term is the pulpit. So this thing here is referred to as the pulpit, obviously. It's great to be standing behind it, standing in front of the green screen, standing in front of a camera, by all these hanging blankets and pillows and everything too. So, it's just an overall good feeling. Now, I could have easily bailed on the show today. I mean, it was just a very busy day. The NASCAR race was going on, the Vikings are playing, and had to catch up on some sleep. So, all those three things, that pretty much consumes a whole day. And then some. So yeah, it was a little tricky to make time for text messages here, but I mean, it's the resurrection. I mean, it's only the second coming of the first resurrection, so it's pretty important to be able to be present and be able to bring you the good messages. And that's another thing too that we're sort of contemplating whether we should name the shows or title. Obviously yes, it's Resurrection of Text Messages. But should we name each individual episodic show? I mean, say episode 58 or episode 57 or February 11, 2018. I mean, should we give it a name like that or just continue on with the show and just say it's the Resurrection of Text Messages? So I think ultimately we probably just stick with the Resurrection of Text Messages. Because I mean, if you look at all the good talk shows out there, well, InfoWars is about the only one that comes to my mind. But it's not InfoWars episode 985. It's InfoWars. That's basically all it is. So we'll probably just stick with the Resurrection of Text Messages. And the name might get shortened up at some point, but in the immediate future, we'll just stick with that. And we're broadcasting from Elk River, Minnesota. It's about 10 degrees outside. A little cold out there, but it wasn't too cold to film some on-location promos this morning, so we went ahead and did that. Well, yeah, that coupled on top with NASCAR and catching up on sleep, so it was a pretty jam-packed day, and it wouldn't have it any other way to be able to bring you the ladies and gentlemen, home text messages, because it's very important to have a pulpit here to speak to you, the ladies and gentlemen at home. So, to get into our topic of discussion for this evening, one of the things that we've tackled before, just something that I wanted to touch base with, actually probably maybe possibly utilize the entire show since we're doing the shortened format, is indoor plants. Now, a lot of times in a northern climate here, the deep north, see, we can just go ahead and call Minnesota the deep north. I mean, yeah, you got Canada and Antarctica and whatever else is up there. I guess if it's the flat earth, then it's I don't even know what north would be then. It's as far as what its relative measurement is. But yeah, Minnesota, we can call the deep north of the good old US of A. Now it is a pretty long state though, so southern Minnesota, Worthington, all the way up to northern Minnesota, International Falls, War Road, you're looking at a few hundred miles. So the average temperature, there might be a differential of 15 to 20 degrees. So there's a bit of a deviation there. Apparently in the south Minnesota, there might be some rattlesnakes too. So I suppose that's a good reason. Now, we're in central Minnesota, Elk River, right in the heart of Minnesota. I mean, if you were to put the center of gravity of Minnesota, it would probably be St. Cloud, actually. So Elk River is about an hour east of that. But getting back to the topic, so Minnesota, cold winters, the air is dry. One of the things that indoor plants do best is they keep your relative humidity high inside your house, or your trailer, or your RV, or your tent. So what we have here, it's called a hygrometer / thermometer. So right now, actually you should try to get a little close up of this. So if you look at this here, ladies and gentlemen, you have RH, relative humidity. Now it says 50 on there, which is ideal. And thermometer at 60 degrees, which is ideal. So now, yeah, obviously there's space heaters running on and things of that nature. But for the most part, there's probably about 3 dozen indoor plants in here. And they certainly keep the humidity right where it needs to be. Now, as it gets colder and colder and you need to have more supplemental heating from the furnace or space heaters, the air is going to dry off a little bit more. And then this humidity may drop off. But for 10 degrees outside, that's pretty cold. So there's plenty of heat. Artificial sources of heat in here. Well, I don't know if they're considered artificial. I mean, the man makes the heat generating device, so you could probably consider them an artifact in that regard. But for the most part, temperature outside is pretty cold, so there's a lot of heat in here, which you would suspect the air would dry out. But the air is not really drying out because of the indoor plants. Now, dry air is pretty bad for people because you get dry skin, you'll get dandruff, and whatever other health detriments. I'm sure it's probably not healthy for your lungs either. So, if they're going to label this thing dry, comfort, dry, ideal, comfort, wet, there's, when you have measurements like that, you generally want to stay in the ideal zone, which is exactly what this hygrometer indicates. It's not faked, that is what it actually is, 50% relative air humidity. And it's mostly because of the indoor plants. Now, one of the things that the indoor plants like to have done to them is you just take a spray bottle, spray them pretty much every day. That'll, give some moisture to leaves and everything too. And then, of course, you got to do the plant food and water them every once. If the top 1 inch of the soil is dry, but I mean that's not too difficult to do. I mean, yeah, if you're one of the things that you kind of want to look out for is if you got plastic. You obviously want to put plastic if you're putting plants on the floor. If you're putting them on a shelf or whatever the case may be. Then if the water spills over the top or if it drains through the bottom, it doesn't get on any wooden floors because water damage to your house is pretty debilitating and it's not something you want to fix. It costs a lot of money too and it creates mold, and then mold gets in the air and it just causes a big mess too. And that's the other thing too, when you're watering plants you don't want to water them too often because then the mold will start growing in the pots and then you got another mess. So that's a good idea to pay attention to that too, especially if when you got 50% relative humidity. So it's going to be humid around, especially if you're watering the plants every other day. Now, a lot of time, if you go to the store or Walmart, Big Joe Rosso's greenhouse, generally you'll see the pots watered pretty much every day. Usually at the stores, they keep the plants in a very small container, which allows them to fill more shelf, or allows them to put more plants on the same amount of shelf space. So, I mean, they're running a business. Yeah, obviously they want to keep the plants alive. But since they have less dirt inside each pot, they're going to have to water more frequently, otherwise it'll dry out right away. Whereas if you oversize the pot for the plant, you don't really have to water it that often because when you do water it, you can put a decent amount of water in and it holds for a week or two or whatever. And then, just slap some plant food on there and then they're good to go. Now, you definitely want to watch out for mold, though. I mean, when I looked today, I had a couple plants with mold, so just kind of pull it off the top a little bit. And you do have the option of maybe running some type of fan. Or if you got one of those space heaters with a fan, you could probably use that too. That'll sort of dry off the top of the soil, but then, yeah, you'll probably have to water it more often. But, I mean, if you're getting plants that are moldy, it's probably a good idea to water them less often, but, fan is also an option as well. But probably just water it less. That's most likely the best strategy to employ. And the other thing that plants do is, now this might sound a little far-fetched, but yeah, they're not sources of heat, but they can take heat from the sun and store it. They're basically solar collectors. So they take the heat, or even just light in general. If you got an open window, even if it's a north-facing window and there's just ambient light or whatever you want to call it, atmospheric light or whatever the case may be, and not light that's not doesn't. I mean, all light originates from the sun, but light that's bouncing every which direction. It doesn't come directly from the sun, but it somehow makes it inside your house through a north-facing window, and then it hits the plants. A lot of those plants that you want to stick in those windows are low-light plants, but those all the plants collect energy, whether it's from the sun, tachyon fields, the ether quarks that are flying through our airspace right now as we speak. It absorbs energy from them, and hell, maybe even the microwaves, or maybe there's specific radio waves, radio frequencies that are coming through, and the plants resonate with them and absorb that energy as well. So there is one animal, I think I read this a while back, but it could be nonsense. Apparently a shark actually they found that it outputs more energy than it inputs based on its consumption of solid foods. So there was not really a conclusion, but a theory that the shark must be absorbing energy from some other type of source rather than just the food that it's consuming. Whereas humans, we're generally under the assumption that, yeah, the sun is healthy and everything. It allows you to synthesize vitamin D and it heats your body up and whatnot. So then you can use less caloric burning to heat your body up. But we generally assume that all of our energy comes from the food we intake. Whereas a shark apparently can absorb some weird waves of some nature, like not water waves, but out of tachyon fields or so, whatever those Star Trek terms are. So maybe plants are doing that too. I mean, there's just a lot of things about the Earth and the higher intelligence, however they created things and living entities that we don't really quite understand. I mean, artifacts, human, man-made things, I mean, yeah, I don't understand 99% of them. But, it is possible to understand a lot of that stuff, too, in this existence that we're in now, in this plane of existence, because someone somewhere created it. Computer program code, for example. Somebody somewhere created it. Like the guy that made C programming code or the Go language programming. It's a guy that made the compiler, figured out what words to interact with the computer, and that's what you type in to manipulate your microcontrollers, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, ultimately it's just one of them deals where if man makes something, man can understand it. But if a higher intelligence makes it, then we can kind of finagle our way through it and understand it to where it benefits us, but we're not going to understand it all, So, I mean, plants, yeah, they're solar collectors and all that good fun stuff, and they can, I mean, they're not going to, you're not going to be able to put 40 plants in your house and open up a window and not use heating to heat your house, but it seems like they would have some type of temperature regulating properties, but, I mean, probably not a whole lot. I mean, it's not going to bring your house from 50 to 70 degrees if you toss in a couple plants. It's just, plants want to create an environment that's equal to what they would expect outside in the climates that they prefer. I mean, an indoor plant here, yeah, it's not made to freeze. Plants are water-based, so they don't like freezing. Just like humans, they don't really like freezing. Not a lot of living things do appreciate that. And most animals do, that can tolerate the cold. It's usually because they have a big rug for a coat, and that allows them to deal with more things of that nature too. So, yeah, ultimately it's just the plants want to create an environment that they want to live in. And the environment that they want to live in is usually the same environment that humans want to live in. So that's why humans can work symbiotically with indoor plants, because we want to create an environment that's 60, 70 degrees, 50% relative humidity, not a lot of wind or air blowing around, which kind of blows a hole in that last theory I said about running a fan, which probably is kind of a silly idea. And, they just don't want to have people stepping on them or animals eating them. So that's basically what a plant's ideal atmosphere is, and it's consistent with humans' atmosphere. So that's why it's a good idea to have indoor plants. Otherwise, you just got a bunch of weird synthetic materials here, like this wooden wall and the green paint, which probably emitted a lot of volatile organic compounds when it was first applied. And the pulpit, which is made out of wood with probably a bunch of weird preservatives on it, and I think it probably lasts forever. It's pretty solid and sturdy too. You could probably put a few power slams on this and it would survive. All these blankets are probably some weird polymer compound. Actually, now most of these are wool, so I take that back. It is, animal based. But yeah, I mean, when you're in a living environment where you're just surrounded by synthetic compounds, it's a good idea to add some organic compounds to bring the health to a higher level. And we want to be healthy. We want you, the ladies and gentlemen, to be healthy. And of course, if I'm not healthy, it's not possible to bring you this show at a high level, or at any level for that matter. So, with that being said, it looks like we're coming to the conclusion of the show in a little bit here. But let me just double check the camera. I'm not entirely sure what time it is. Alright, so now, without the laptop here, it's hard to know what time we started and everything too. Basically just going off. I haven't done the show in a while. Before it was pretty easy to know, like, oh, it's 20 minutes, boom, we're done. Off to the races, or off to burning it onto the computer and seeing that our hard drive is full. And that's another thing too. We might have to put multiple shows on at once because the producers ordered an external hard drive, one of those Seagate ones. It's 4 terabytes. And when we got it, it didn't have a power supply. Which seems kind of weird because they said it was working. So the assumption is that the proper equipment to test it is available at their facilities, but to not provide it with the item, it makes it a little bit of a challenge. So of course, we had to go order a power supply then from eBay or whatever sell power supplies. Yeah, you can try to put together a bunch of cobble something together, but then you sort of run the probability of wrecking the unit. And the external hard drive is something. I mean, it's not critical because most of the videos are probably on YouTube until we get banned or kicked off or something like that. And some of them are on brighteon.com as well. So if you want to check out brighteon.com, text messages, there should be one video on there at least. But they do a funny thing where they review it and then they slap it on there. So yeah, whatever works for them. I haven't even checked that video in a long time. It's probably still got the one view from the guy that had to sit there and review it. I'm sure that was a fun hour for him. But the Seagate external hard drive, it's got 4 terabytes. We'll be able to record lots of shows on there, so we'll be able to keep this program running and operating at full flanking ahead. Probably 4 nights a week will be good. It looks like I checked all the news sites that we typically use: greenmedinfo.com, naturalnews.com, Western Journal, science.news. So they're all out there. They're still running on 8 cylinders. So we'll be able to leverage them for the information that we need, which is a great sign. And we might expand out and find some other acceptable sources as well. But for the meantime, we'll just stick with them for now. They seem pretty reliable and dependable. I was going to look into some today, but just the time got ahead of us. So here we are, just talking about indoor plants, which is very important. It's a very critically important topic. And if you know anyone that has indoor plants, more than likely it's a bit of an addiction. You'll get 1 and then you'll get 5 and 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I mean, yeah, there's about probably 2 windows in this house too that could use some more indoor plants. So might have to get another dozen or so. Then that'd probably bring the total up to about 4 dozen. So. But yeah, I mean, it does add a little bit more maintenance. You got to spray down more plants, water more plants. Repotting them will probably be an 8-hour endeavor, and it's worth it though. It's one of them things where what you put into it, you get out of it. It's not like drinking alcohol, for example. I mean, you go start your car up, let it warm up for 10 minutes, drive to the liquor store, spend $20-30 on a bottle of raspberry Smirnoff, drive home, pop the tap, pop the cork, and start drinking it. And you get rowdy and crap your pants and puke in the toilet, and then you wake up with a headache, and you don't really get much out of it. You put a lot into it, but you don't really get much out of it. So, I mean, yeah, watering plants and indoor plants, you get plenty out of that. Drinking alcohol, not so much. So, we're going to have to put a wrap on this show then, and look, I'm pretty sure it's officially almost the 20 minutes now. Now, we certainly don't want to go over. That's one of the red flags. It's like a curfew. So that's why it's very important to not do that. But thanks a lot for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate it. We salute you. More than likely halftime is over for the Vikings game, so it's a good idea to go catch that, and have a good one, ladies and gentlemen.